This is Remote Ruby.
Have you any remote idea to the meaning of the word?
Hello.
Yo.
Is anyone here? Anyone home?
Knock, knock, knock.
It would be really funny. Just as soon as the Zoom opens, we just start recording and it's like, hello, hello.
Dude, that's the paid subscriber pre-show.
Oh, yes. I like it. What's new with you, man? Jason is out this week, I guess. We should mention that. I'm sick,
Yeah,
but
out again. He was out work sick too. And I was out on Monday giving a talk and I came in on Tuesday and he got sick. And I was like, ooh, we just passed each other. It was like a passing subway in Manhattan.
yeah, because he's been out for the whole month for his sabbatical. So he gets an extra week, sort of.
Yeah. Was it intentional?
Not one that he gets to enjoy.
No. I don't know what's up with him, but I'm sure it's awful if he's been out for that long.
Yeah. Or his secret side hustle at Twitter has been giving him hell.
Oh, yeah. Oh, is that? Damn, that's what it is, isn't it? It all makes sense now when we put the pieces together.
Like, the timing of this was really weird.
Yeah. Jason's been running their Fisher Price software behind the scenes all this time.
Oh, man. You said you gave a talk?
Yeah. On Monday, I gave a talk at BridgetownConf. It was virtual.
Oh, yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Yeah. It went well, I think.
I missed that. How was all that? So it was a virtual one. Was there live stream people tuned into, or how'd that work?
Yeah. So he did it with Zoom, which I thought was smart. Everyone was added to a Discord group and they were given access to the Zoom link. And then the time happened and there was a schedule and Jared was basically the MC and gave 2 talks. I didn't get to see all of them because I had to do a podcast with Julie midway through. But I gave my talk in the morning and I feel like it went really well. For that, I am happy because I hate this about myself so much. A reinforcement of really awful behavior because I knew this talk was coming out. I thought it was a week out from when I thought. So a week ago, last Monday, Julie was like, yeah, and you're giving a talk next week. And I'm like, what? So I was like, oh crap. I'm like, oh crap. I got to write this talk. It wasn't like I was starting from scratch or anything, but I was like, oh crap, I got to do this. And I was like, I know myself. I'm going to be writing this on the morning of the conference if I don't force myself to write it this week. So I asked everyone at work if I could, and this is something that we've been doing like since I've joined. It was like, if someone's giving a talk, everyone will jump in a Zoom call and give them feedback on the talk. They have a run through. It's awesome. And shout out to Jess and Stephanie from work for hopping in and helping me because they gave me some great feedback and I ran through it with them in the morning but I hadn't finished it yet. That was my attempt to force myself to finish it. I had not finished it, but they still give me some really great feedback. So I was like, all right, this is perfect. I have everything I need. So I'll just finish it this weekend. No, I did do a lot of other things that weekend though.
You do really strike me as a person who would finish the talk during the talk. Yeah.
Well, and I've been called out for like finishing homework during class before and all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
that's normal, right?
Yeah. So I was stressing out all weekend. I need to finish this talk. Taking my medication. I'm like, I'm going to finish this talk. I did not finish the talk. And then the morning of, finished the talk and gave it. And I think it went really well. And it's just like a reinforcement of that awful behavior. Because no matter what, I know I can kill it. I believe in my heart that I'll kill it. And as long as I believe that, it always works out.
There you go. You don't even need to practice now. You should just embrace it and just be like, I will just come up with my talk idea on the spot.
Yeah. And I didn't actually run through the whole thing. I never ran through the entire thing, start to finish, because I was adding slides up until the point I was about to give it.
That's funny. Yeah, it's pretty much all of our weekly podcast prep is do it on the fly.
Yeah.
It's just good at winging it and you're good to go forever. We can call on you anytime in a pinch and you can just fill the half a day of a conference if we need you to.
Yeah. ADHD is not my superpower, but if I had to pick one thing it helps me do, it's that. Like I can do that.
That's funny. Are those talks and things going to be published on YouTube at some point or
I believe so.
Something like that? Cool.
They were all recorded. So, yep, I think so.
I remember seeing that was coming up and then life has been a blur lately. So I totally forgot about it because I did want to tune in and watch those because what else am I doing? A lot of times these days, just sitting and watching YouTube anyways.
Right.
But yeah, that didn't happen. I know this past week, the wife and I have been like, oh yeah, it's like Tuesday and it's Thursday or whatever. We're just like a long ways off. And I've been up since 4 a.m. or just a bit earlier than 4 a.m. today. So it's weird. I'm either start working at 10 p.m. or start at 4 a.m. lately.
Yeah.
It's strange times, but Colin and I are working on those last little things to do before Black Friday sales. It's always a fun time of year. I'm sure you guys get slammed with like crazy traffic and stuff for Podia.
Yeah, it's a big time for us. And I know there was some chatter about, I have no concept of time, right? So like for me, I don't care up until the point where like I need to care about it. For me, it seems like Tuesday.
After it's already started.
Yeah. So people were posting things like, all right, things are happening. Like these are the things that we can do and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, Rails can scale apparently. And I'm like, so on Thursday, I will worry about that.
I imagine there's going to be quite a bit of auto scaling and things going on and just, and it's wild too, because it's not like Black Friday is a thing anymore. It's like the whole month or whatever. And it's kind of nice because it spreads it out. So it's not like you're, going crazy just for 24 hours or something. This is like now a lot of traffic spread out over a week or 2 weeks or something. So
do you think that's a conspiracy from big tech so they don't have to build better servers?
I definitely think that they see that where they're like, we have all these people here and we don't have enough product to sell them right there, but we can ship it to them from our warehouse and sell it a week early, a week late. Who cares? I can definitely imagine that's kind of a way for them to combat not being able to like keep up with all of that in person and whatever else. There's definitely a lot of that going on. And general, probably just lots more extra money they make instead of being limited to the first 10 people who are in line at Best Buy at 4 a.m. Which with my current schedule, actually, if anyone needs to pay me to stand in line for some iPhone or something or big TV.
Hold on. I've got a list. You're just going to be chilling. I mean.
Yeah.
Dang. So you're starting to work when I normally wake up now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been interesting. It's kind of nice too. Something fun about programming has always been I really, really feel productive when I am working and I know everybody else is laying on the couch watching Netflix and stuff. Like I thrive off some of that energy. So early mornings, late nights, love it. I can work real hard then.
Same here. It's fun at night. There's something about the silence and just knowing that no one's out right now. Everything's quiet. Everything's chill. And then you can kind of just slip into like a zone. Oh
yeah. Just some caffeine, some like snack and music. And you're in that zone for way too many hours. And you realize, oh, what time is it? The sun's coming up.
Yeah.
I used to do that a lot when I was learning to code in college and stuff. And once you get a job, it can be harder to do that or whatever. And it really brings me back to those times of programming just for fun and not having responsibilities. So that's always a blast. I like that. Yeah. I think that's why I like it too. But I still do it. And I've been desperately trying the past few months to rein it in because it's awful for you. And I'm like, this is impacting me negatively. I have to stop doing this, but there's something so addictive about it. It is. I remember at one point, it was somewhere around like end of college, people talk about like having different sleep schedules and sleeping 4 hours at a time, 2 times a day or something. I remember doing that, not intentionally. And then I realized like, oh, it's kind of that natural thing. And man, it was really fun, but I was up all weird times of the day. And then people would expect me to be there at work or something, like be online at noon or 1 p.m. or something. I'm like passing out or whatever. And I was like, yeah, this isn't as practical when nobody else is doing this, right? Yeah. It's hard to have really close personal connections when you're doing that, like weird sleep. Yeah. It's like sometimes you're like awake for 4 days and then all of a sudden you're asleep for like 5 and people are like, what the hell? I have to say that this morning I did a little bit of work and then I was like, I should fiddle with something else. And did we talk about last week the new updated missing template error page? So yesterday, the PR got merged that added the controller and action names. So instead of it just being like books controller index, and some like hard-coded example, it now uses the actual controller and action names, which is cool. So I was like, oh, well, there's part of the problem solved for me. And I started fiddling with the actionable errors. And let's just say that its current implementation is a little naive, and actionable errors doesn't have any context about the actual error itself. So it like knows the error name or whatever when you submit it, but it doesn't actually like keep those instance variables like the controller name and stuff. Oh, the other problem with it too is these are like generated at a class level. And so if you had a request and you wanted to have like a generate HTML template or JSON template or whatever, you couldn't dynamically define those buttons. So I kind of hacked it together where when you initialize the error, we go and update the class and change the actions that are available, which is dynamic, which is great, but it's also not thread safe or anything because you're modifying that class there. So it gets it to work as a proof of concept. And it's like, oh, cool, this is possible now. But I think it gave me the idea of like, we could take that same approach and have the module actually look for the class actions that are like generic, but also have the instances provide some other options that you could probably pass arguments through. So if we were able to pass the argument of the controller name and the format and the action name to that, then the rack middleware that like actually intercepts the button submit, we could actually have that go do the instantiation of the error again, or at least pass those into the block that gets called. And then you could have kind of this dynamic thing, which would be cool. So I may try and implement that here 4 a.m. tomorrow or something like that. Yeah, it's just like you have an idea and you're like, oh, it'd be cool to implement that. And then you go do it and you're like, oh, we have no infrastructure for this yet. And we got to go build that before we can implement this feature. It's like one of those things where you're like, I wish I could knock it out in an hour, but it's not going to be like that. If we do get it right, though, that could make the actionable errors actually way more flexible and like usable in any library in lots of contexts. And you could pass in a global ID and say, hey, this user caused this error, and your button click for the action could actually load the user again and do something cool with it. So there's lots of like opportunities there, which I think is cool. So we'll see what happens and see how it turns out. And it may not get merged or whatever, but it was one of those fun like Ruby projects to hack on that was like, oh, this will be a good challenge. So we'll see. I'm excited though. Like this stuff is, I think, what's needed to like really make Rails sort of interactively teach you as a beginner. When something goes wrong, we can tell you in the error message, here's what happened and here's how to fix it. But that button to go do it for you is going to make it much smoother as well. I'm excited for that kind of stuff to get better and better over time.
Yeah, that's really cool. Especially when you're talking about like showing like a user, for instance. The first thought that popped in my head is like there are several times where I will have an invalid user record for some reason. And because of that, when I'm trying to go to my index page, it won't load because of that. But I have no idea which one it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like a recent thing that I sort of fixed in Noticed is like if you create a notification and it uses the global ID reference to a record, and if that record gets deleted when you load the notification, it doesn't know what the hell to do and it blows up because it can't find the associated record. So we could actually catch that and make that an actionable error and say, hey, do you want to just delete this notification because the related thing's gone anyways? This notification's useless. It was just like a configuration mistake. Like you forgot to dependent destroy this record. And then you could just have that button. It's like, hey, do you want to destroy this record because it's not valid anymore? That's awesome. Then you could have the ID passed along and it could look it up when you click the button and do whatever is needed. One thing's a little tricky is like the button on the page actually is just a button too. And so you have to pass in any of your parameters through the URL. Maybe that becomes different or whatever. And you can only kind of pass simple things. It's not like you have the web console, same binding, and you can actually interact with all the variables there. But that's okay. I think you don't need all of that most of the time. You could give the global ID of whatever record it is, or just the ID of, what class it's for. I think you can get by with the simpler sort of arguments. We'll see what happens with it. But yeah, that feels like the missing piece that makes it complete. It sounded great when it shipped, and it's fine for doing something like migrations where it's like on and off and there's no configuration or no context needed. But past that, it's not really useful. So this would kind of solve that problem and make it useful.
Yeah, that's really cool. You've thrown me back into like a problem that I had last week with passing parameters around. Dude, ugh. Do you run into this issue with Turbo where you're like, oh yeah, all these requests are working, and then all of a sudden I'm using this one action and it's updating Pagey, and Pagey have you run into weird issues with Turbo and Pagey? We're going to sidetrack for a second.
Don't think so.
I have.
I haven't done anything other than just render Pagey out. It's just linking to the next page. So are you doing a more complicated Pagey setup there, or?
No, not really. I'm going to say what this problem is, and then because maybe like there's someone out there who can help me fix it, because I fixed it and it's not a great fix. It's actually a really shoddy fix, but it fixed it. But I'm rendering my Pagey stuff normally in an index action, right? Goes on the page. But then there's this other Turbo stream where I can hit something on the page and it actually changes the result, the collection that Pagey is using, right? So then we want to obviously update the Pagey instances on the page when that Turbo stream goes through.
Gotcha.
But Pagey sets its URL based on the request. So if you're using a post controller and that's like rendering all your posts on your page and they're paginated, but then you want to apply a filter to all the posts, and that's maybe a filter route on your post controller. When that filter route updates the Turbo stream, Pagey's like looking at the request. What should I set as the URL using those helpers that it has for, choosing the right URL and stuff? It's like, okay, well, this request came from the filter route on this post controller. So that's what I'm going to set the URL as. And so then when you try to like go to the next pagination result, it tries to hit that action again instead of your index action.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'm sure that there's a way, basically like duplicate the request object, but provide it the right one.
Yeah.
For rendering what you would need to do there or something like that, I would guess. Because you reminded me, the one thing I have done is, if you add Turbo streams and you're listening for new records or whatever, then like, you don't want to be on page 2, 3, 4, 5 and have new records inserted at the top there. So we did set up the jumpstart scaffold. So like we'll only include the Turbo stream from on page 1 so that it actually makes sense. And that way you're not listening for new records and they're like brand new things being inserted on page 100 because you're on some weird place and whatever. Yeah, there's a little bit of that stuff. And it's like weird too, because you insert 5, 10, 15 records in real time, and then that page now has 35, 45, 50 records on that page. And then you click next and it like goes to the same view with a lot of the same records. When you get into doing those stream from things, it can actually be like weird edge cases and stuff that you didn't actually expect because you don't have a static page anymore.
Yeah. And I fixed it, right? But
yeah,
it wasn't good. The only way I could figure out, like looking at the page gem, is you can rewrite this underlying method URL for something, but it's going to be a lot slower, just FYI, however you overwrite it. And I'm like, I can't even think how I'd overwrite it. And so what if I just stuck a little slap of JavaScript on the page to change that URL when the Turbo stream loads?
Oh, I see. Yeah. I will say that what's his name? The Pagey author is awesome and like really active at replying to issues and stuff. So if you do have any questions, hit up him on the issues or whatever.
I need to.
He's wonderful.
My lazy way.
Yeah, I know. I do the same thing. I need it done now. I don't want to wait for somebody to respond in 24 hours or even longer. So I'm like hacking my own solution there, but I feel you on that.
Whether US East 1 is down or you forgot to add a configuration file, everyone has an outage from time to time. When your next outage occurs, transparency is critical. The difference between a minor annoyance that people soon forget and a fiasco that creates sustained resentment is in how you communicate. That's why you need Honeybadger. Honeybadger will be a crucial component of your incident response plan with their uptime monitoring service that now has an exciting new feature, public status pages. Create a new status page with custom domains, branding, and more. Don't let Twitter be the only way your users can find out if your app is down. Sign up for Honeybadger to improve your instant response with a shiny new status page that you will be proud to show your users. Visit honeybadger.io and start giving your users a better experience today, and let them know Remote Ruby sent you. Thanks to Honeybadger for their continued support of Remote Ruby.
We had some issues with Melee Search, Pagination and stuff, and that happened a few different times. Little issues that Melee Search decided that they're not going to return the actual total count, and they're just going to estimate it like Google does or whatever. Obviously, that affects pagination and stuff. So
Right.
it's kind of important for certain things, and he's been killer at keeping up with that stuff and maintaining it. I'm sure he would probably have some ideas on how to handle it, but yeah, it sounds like you're on the right path on that. But there is those fun things that, like you were saying, his performance versions are like some crazy Ruby method that does all this stuff to render it out without any views, and almost a component, but just regular old helper method, and some interesting optimizations in there to skip. Obviously, rendering partials and stuff is slow, so
Right.
slowish in comparison, at least. I love watching those benchmarks come out of that. Same with what Joel's doing on Flex. Just awesome little tiny changes, tiny things can make a big difference.
Yeah, it's very cool. Pagey is awesome, I will say. Love it. I had to bring it in because I wasn't able to use whatever library they were using before with Turbo.
Yeah.
So, yeah, love it.
Yeah. What was that? The 37 Signals new developer blog thingy? They had a new pagination thing that they had posted.
I saw that, but I actually can't read, so I didn't read it.
Must make it hard to code, huh?
Nah, I can write.
Oh, you can spew stuff, but you can't.
Yeah, I can't. I've never proofread a paper ever in my whole life. So
you have write-only access to the repos, no read access.
To my brain and to all aspects. Yeah, there is a write-only access.
Yeah, Basecamp's had that gear pagination gem for a long time.
I remember that.
That if anybody doesn't know, like the idea behind it is kind of, I'm trying to think of a good example of a site that uses that, but it's kind of like the idea of page 1 is going to have the top results. And as you get into page 5 or page 10, we assume that you're not finding what you're wanting. So page 5 might include 50 results instead of 10 or 25 or whatever. And I always thought that was a good one, where it's like, oh, it is intuitive to assume that that user, if they're going down the rabbit hole here, they are likely not finding what they want, which I thought was cool. But they were talking about specifically some complicated index stuff in Hey and pagination for that, because they need to join 4 tables to render your emails, and it's like permissions things and whatever. And so they had to do some like interesting tricks to convince MySQL to use the right indexes for all of those, because otherwise it was just doing like full scans or something. It was an interesting read. I didn't fully get through it, if I remember right. So I'll have to go back and read through it. It's funny. Pagination, such a required feature, and yet it's like something that we still struggle with or whatever. Always kind of running into different issues and things with it.
Yeah. I mean,
not as simple as it seems on the surface.
It's definitely not as simple as it seems. I think Planet Scale came out with something for Pagination 2 recently, or at minimum they were blogging about it.
Aaron Francis's like pagination for MySQL approach in Laravel, and then they had converted that over to Rails or something.
Works for them because they're on MySQL, and us Postgres people are like, come on, I want it.
There's this called FastPage for Rails apps. Man, Planet Scale is the one that's like, oh, come back to SQL.
I know.
I'm like,
ooh, MySQL.
Like I've been using Postgres for so long that it seems scary to want to go back to MySQL, but they do some killer stuff over there.
Yeah, it's tempting. MySQL looking kind of nice these days, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah, they are doing some cool stuff, but so is like Crunchy Data and the other Postgres companies out there too. But there's just some cool stuff happening at Planet Scale that's like all this kind of Git and GitHub style of managing your code being converted over to managing migrations in your database and stuff, and really cool stuff. What else is new?
Dig in.
Joel get updated for the new OpenSSL CVE, or a couple of them actually. A couple of security updates there.
No idea. I'm assuming Andrea's usually on top of that stuff. I was like heads down in support all week. So
oh joy.
Yeah. It's nice when you have someone with you. I like support at Podia so much better. I will say that because like my previous companies had to do way more support, and the Podia support system is just so much nicer. It's like, hey, 1 week we all trade off. It's like you and someone else do it for a week, and then the next week someone else does it, and then it just cycles around. And like that way, I'm not answering like and working on tickets all day, every day, or always being pulled back to tickets that like are being worked on. It's very nice.
I feel that a lot with the old Hatchbox. There were so many little decisions that I made poorly, just out of, let's keep it simple. And those just do not work in the long run. And I made some mistakes with that with, like teams, all of their billing is whoever's the team owner gets billed to them, where it's like they should all be separate billing and little decisions like that. And those were like, originally, I didn't build it for teams at all. So it's nice that the new Hatchbox has all of those done correctly, and it's on Jumpstart. So like everything that we've done and needed for Hatchbox, like I've went back and put it in Jumpstart Pro, which has been great. So other people can benefit from that. And I was telling Colin the other day, like the new Hatchbox, we still get a lot of tickets, but they're like ones I just answer now instead of SSHing into the server and spending 2 hours debugging something. It's now like, oh yeah, you did this, probably just need to tweak that in your configs and you're good to go. And it's like much, much easier all around. We upgraded to the new Caddy the other day and added support for like wildcard domains from GoDaddy and whatever, but it's real easy. For the second time I've compiled a Go program like Caddy, that's interesting. It's totally different than everything in Ruby, but it was really weird. It was like compiling Caddy, and you have these modules you can add in, and they're like GitHub repos that you like reference. And for whatever reason, I have the list of all of these DNS ones. In the middle is like GoDaddy and then Google Cloud DNS. And it is compiling, and then it stops at GoDaddy, and it says that Google App Engine has an error. And I'm like, okay, what the heck? So like maybe that one's bugged, and I'll like comment out Google Cloud DNS, assuming that it finished GoDaddy and whatever. Comment that out, doesn't work. And I'm like, that's weird. GoDaddy should have nothing to do with App Engine because that's a Google product. And I don't even know why Google Cloud DNS would include the App Engine stuff. So I just keep like commenting stuff out, and I move GoDaddy to the top, and it like compiles fine, but it doesn't compile if it's in the middle of this list of modules to include. It's like they don't depend on each other at all. So why is it not compiling in one order and it is in the other? No real context in like the stack trace or anything. They're not useful from what I saw. That one's still a mystery to me. Funny enough, I can put Google Cloud DNS back in right after GoDaddy. If I put those two at the very top of the list,
of course,
compiles fine. But if I move them alphabetically in the list, does not. I have no idea what's going on there. But for fun, I was playing with the new Caddy. Supports HTTP 3 out of the box, which is interesting. Have you ever played with that?
No.
I haven't
You're
either.
having fun doing this. I'm like killing people in Modern Warfare. Like,
I mean, fair enough. I haven't gotten a new game console for a while. I need to catch up at some point. HTTP 3 is interesting. Like, it's not built on TCP anymore. It's built on UDP. And then if you use Cloudflare as your like front end DNS, they actually like will process requests in HTTP 3 for you and then just like forward along as HTTP 2 or whatever. But now you can like deploy an app with Hatchbox and go directly to your server, and it'll be HTTP 3. So I thought that was cool. That was their big new feature in 2.6. And I was like, oh, cool. I've never played with that. I don't even know what the major differences are. So I started reading about it and I was trying it out, and it was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. It looks like there's a lot of the things that HTTP 2 kind of was promising that didn't actually turn out to be that practical or whatever, are kind of getting solved in that. Looks interesting.
Didn't they like roll it back once it came out, like originally?
Maybe. I don't remember, because I know like HTTP 1 and 1.1 or somewhere in there was like keep alive connections and things like that they had tried to do some stuff that didn't succeed, and kind of, we'll try this out. Then you see it in real production use and you're like, yeah, this doesn't actually make sense for whatever. But I'd have to read more into it and stuff. I remember seeing it and it's like CSS4. Oh, cool.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see that in 10 years.
Yeah. They're already working on HTTP4, aren't they?
They've got to be, right?
Yeah.
Probably
yeah.
Somebody's working on 5 and 6.
Yes. Isn't Jack Dorsey working on Web 5 or something? So 4 is not that popular anyway. Let's just skip.
That's
4.
what he's going to sink his teeth into now that Elon's doing a great job managing Twitter.
Burn, got him.
Ooh. It's funny because we don't ever have to like really do much work with the low level protocols or anything. We're just like, hey, we'll build on top of that. Assume that whoever's working on Rack is doing the right stuff for us. Thanks,
Right.
Tender Love.
Right. Yeah. The things they don't tell you in your networking courses in computer science when you're like, trying to like understand, okay, well, the arrow goes here and then it goes back here. And then you get to the real world and you're like, yeah, we solved that a while ago, y'all. What are you talking about?
Yeah. You're like, nobody touches that. Just Tender Love. It's nice. Those are abstractions that save us a lot of time and we can go work on products instead of like dealing with packets and whatnot.
Yeah.
No thanks. Not
Yeah.
fun.
No packet math for me. Not again.
Or it could be fun, but it is not productive. We're not very quickly productive in any way.
Right.
Your boss is not going to be happy with your sprint progress.
Yeah. I can't tell Jamie one day, I'm like, yeah, well, today we did a lot of packet math. And
Yeah.
so if we have a header that is this big and a body that's this big, then our total request.
You guys been sniffing too many packets lately?
Oh, I've sniffed some packets before in my life. I've wire sharked.
Oh, yeah, me too. One of my friends was like war driving a bunch. So somebody in the passenger seat with their laptop and we go map the neighborhood Wi-Fi networks, which is like, what are you going to do with that? You're going to park in front of somebody's house and like use their Wi-Fi? Probably not. And then he was in an apartment building one time and we were like learning about, air crack or whatever the Wi-Fi cracking tools were. And we just sat there one night until 4 a.m. or whatever, just cracking Wi-Fi networks just for fun. And it was mostly just copy paste these commands and sit and wait.
Yeah. I think I did that with Jekyll and Hyde one time.
I remember that. I haven't heard that tool be mentioned in years. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yep. I was there. I didn't understand what I was doing at the time, but I was still trying to use it.
Yeah.
And that was way before high school for me.
Did you ever watch Hack 5?
No.
It still exists, but it was a lot more popular back in the day, 2010 kind of thing. But they're like kind of your typical YouTubers that are making stuff, but they're like into pen testing and security stuff and whatever. So they had these little, it was called a Phonera router. And it was like this tiny little phone size router. And they had hacked the firmware on that. And you could basically like go into a store or a business or something and just plug it into the network and then plug the computer that was originally going into that as well. And then it would open up like a wireless network that you could jump on in your car and stuff. And they had all kinds of little other things with that. And the flash drives used to come with a CD-ROM partition or a fake CD so that Windows would like boot up stuff. That was a lot of fun because you could then, they cracked some of the software and then you can run whatever software you wanted instead automatically. And Windows just like trusted it. So we were like fiddling with that in college and I like set it up so it would download all the passwords it could from the computer. Like Firefox didn't save them securely and things like that. and it would install a VNC server. So my buddy goes off to class. He leaves his door open and he's in our suite. So I like go over to his computer, plug a flash drive in. It flashes for like 30 seconds and stops. I go back to my room and he comes back and he starts playing World of Warcraft or whatever. So I like VNC into his computer, jiggle the mouse a little bit, and I hear him start to freak out in the other room. And then like Alt tab, close the game, shut down his computer or whatever. And he like runs into our room and he's like, where the hell is Carlton? Who was somebody else that was on our like floor freshman year of college. And we're like trying to keep a straight face. And we're like, I don't know what's going on. And he's like, I think he hacked my computer. And he like runs off trying to find this guy. And we're like, oh my God. And we got his Amazon password and whatever else. It was kind of crazy how insecure everything was back in the day. Those were really fun times, just building stuff that you weren't supposed to do. It's a lot of fun, surprisingly. Yeah. I don't know why. Weird.
My most famous hacks were actually more like network admins forgot to lock this down and I should not have access to this from this network, but I do. Or my best one was our teacher was like, hey, final exam y'all are going to take at the end of the year is accessible online. And she was like kind of like gloating, hey, one of you can find it. But she knew damn well that none of us would be able to find it because it was like a special test that like was locked down and you had to pay for. And she went out of town for a few days and we had a substitute teacher and the substitute teacher was really old. And she was like, we need to watch this
That was
movie
his
today.
fatal flaw.
Yeah. I need someone to like set up the computer. And like, I was like the computer kid. So like, I was like, I'll do it. Unbeknownst to her, I slapped a flash drive into the computer while the movie was running and slowly cloned her hard drive. So guess who got a really good grade on that exam?
Yeah, you probably got 120%.
I was going to get a good grade no matter what. That was one of my favorite classes, but yeah, it was just kind of funny. And I would continue through the next like year or two. The networks weren't completely locked down. If you put files in certain places on your machine, other computers could access it on the network. And yeah, that's how I made money in high school.
Yeah. Oh man, that reminds me of in grade school, I'm learning to code. So obviously like I don't want to do my math homework and all that stuff. So I finally get my graphing calculator and I know I can program that. So like right before exams, I would just go spend 2 days on my computer writing programs because of course they're like just patterns. So it's this problem and they just change the 2 numbers in it and you need to show your work. So I'd be like, what's the first number? What's the second number? And then show exactly the steps and you just copy them down. And I was like, oh, you know, it'd be interesting. Like, cause we'll get in trouble if the teacher finds a program that's cheating on your homework. So I found that you could type in the theta character somehow. It's not on the normal keyboard, so it's hard to find. So I'm like, I'll set that to number 59. And then when you run the program, it'll be like a guess a number game. And if you guess this number that was the theta variable, then it'll like open up the secret menu with all like the homework stuff. And I spent 3 days or something doing all this and sold that to a couple friends because they were like, holy shit, you got all of this? I was like, yeah, if you want it, just don't get in trouble. Right. And of course, I didn't know going into it that I was going to teach myself all the math on accident. I was like, genius, I'm going to go cheat. I don't have to do anything. And then I realized like, oh yeah, you do this 50 times right in this program, you're going to learn how that math problem works. And you're going to be able to do it by memory at that point. Fooled myself, but made some money doing it.
There you go.
Entrepreneurship from an early age, huh?
Yeah, gotta hustle. It's a hustle mentality out here.
I love it. I think I'm going to call it here because that 4 a.m. feeding and diaper change and stuff really got me dragging.
Yeah, I bet.
I mean, I'll tell you one thing. It takes some coordination to be half asleep in the dark, changing a diaper.
Oh, I'm sure.
You learn it the hard way.
I had 2 brothers. I know how to change a diaper.
Life skills, man.
Yeah, well, have fun.
Yeah, fun. Definitely. All right, I'm going to go pass out.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. Later.